Because the health and fitness world can get a little nutty, it's time for Body Kindness. Today we'll start a conversation about intuitive eating to help you figure out if it's right for you.
We're also going to chat about this month's challenge, Boost Your Mood with Body Kindness, and we'll share how we're doing with our own health goals.
Hello and welcome to Body Kindness, where happiness and health begin by being good to yourself. I'm your host and coach, Rebecca Scritchfield, and I've got the wonderful Bernie Salazar here with me.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in.
Well, I'm really excited to chat with you this week because I love intuitive eating. Intuitive eating, when I was completely lost, trying to figure out what am I going to do as a registered dietitian if I'm no longer going to do the weight loss, calorie plan, meal plan thing, how do I help people eat? And that story is very telling because I really had to go through the journey myself. So when I first studied intuitive eating, I read the book and then I studied supervision under one of the co-authors and co-founders, Evelyn Tribole. And I really did the program for myself first and embraced it. And I got certified all the way up to like pro, and I still do supervision with her. So I feel very passionate about intuitive eating, and I'm just really excited to talk about it because I know that there's a lot of confusion and hesitation and misinformation out there. And I do want to give you a heads up, Bernie, we got a listener who was confused about the differences between intuitive eating and mindful eating. So I'm really looking forward to talking about that.
Rebecca, I'm glad we're talking about this because I myself, you hear terms like intuitive eating or mindful eating, and even though I am a part of this community, I too am kind of confused by it all a bit. So I'm glad that you're here to really serve as our intuitive eating guru so we can break this down. And actually, Rebecca sent me a link too. So I'm going to let her do her intro to this first, but I do want to kind of talk about the link that you sent as well. So you let me know when I can jump in.
Cool. Well, I mean, I guess, I'll start with a general overview of intuitive eating. There's a myth that intuitive eating is something you do for weight loss, and that's not true at all. Sometimes it's compared to diets, and it's just, you just want to kind of forget that, erase that out of your brain. So you don't do intuitive eating with a weight loss goal in mind. That would not be practicing body kindness either. Again, the idea, it's okay to have a weight concern. It's okay to want to change your habits and transform your life. And you really can do that, but it's through taking care of yourself. And intuitive eating is completely aligned with that because it basically is a way to connect to your body and listen to the signals that it's providing as an indication about how you can meet your body's needs. And, one of the core pillars of body kindness is connection. And so it's kind of all wrapped together that there's an elements of mindfulness and really just having the willingness to say, I believe that my body can tell me when it needs nourishment, and I believe that I can reconnect with those signals again. I think that's all you really need to get started. Dieting actually disconnects you from your body's signals, and actually the restriction and the rigidity and the deprivation that diets provide actually predict your body's need to overeat later to compensate from the restriction. And so you're not going to get any of that with intuitive eating because you're going to learn how to reconnect with yourself. So I think that's just a good general overview, but this is not the next, quick fix thing. This is something that you learn and you do for the rest of your life. And the most beautiful thing about it is that you don't have to follow any other rule except for how you learn to connect with yourself and the food.
See, and when we had first talked about incorporating this into today's show, my mind right away went towards, well, does this have structure? And you had sent a link over so I could kind of get informed before today's conversation. And I was happily surprised to see that it does indeed have structure. It actually consists of 10 principles.
Mm-hmm.
And I found them to be really informative, really interesting. And if you don't mind, Rebecca, I'm kind of going to put you on the spot here. I want to get your take on all this. I'm going to read off the 10 principles. And if you could just give me a quick little blurb about each one of them, I'd really appreciate it. Maybe this will help our listeners out there as well. Here we go. 10 principles of intuitive eating. Number one, reject the diet mentality.
Okay, so that is the idea that the quick fix of if I just do this plan, it will give me this magical hope of weight loss. And we know scientifically, it's very well documented. I'll actually share a link in the show notes of a really interesting study that came out through the NIH that was basically trying to find useful ways of people creating long-term weight loss. And they said, research, we can see 5 to 10% of body weight loss in short programs, but within a couple years, all the weight is gained back, and within 5 years, sometimes even more. So it's just saying, look, I'm just going to reject anything about dieting if I'm going to embrace intuitive eating.
And I know for me, that has proven difficult in the past. I'm working on that now, and that might be the same thing with some of our listeners. Let me go ahead and move on to Prince 2. It says, honor your hunger.
Yeah. So this is step one of connection. Hunger is the biological need for food. And we have signs of hunger, the typical empty belly, growling. This is the one that a lot of clients will say, is difficult. And there's a lot of nuance to it. And, if you decide to work with this, maybe we could talk about it a little bit more in the future, but there's a nuance to hunger because you might not always feel empty. Also, you might habituate kind of a mouth hunger or a throat hunger, which is more of an emotional hunger. It's not physical because it's higher up in the body. I've had clients even tell me that they feel it in their chest or like they want their teeth to crunch down on something, but the cue that they get is I'm hungry. And that is really an issue. I know emotional eating is going on. We just have to unpack that to see what is causing the hunger so that they understand that there are different types of hunger and to really be able to tune into what's biological hunger and not biological.
And that's interesting, especially with you, the way you were describing how some of your clients feel. I can definitely relate. I mean, my hunger comes from places that I don't even know. So
the seafood, I see food, I'm hungry, I smell food.
Exactly.
And a lot of that is natural. It's distinguishing between hunger and cravings. And, it's not a very simple thing, but we can all tune in and find that true hunger. We have that ability.
Okay, well, I'm excited as we continue to talk about this to learn more about that specifically. Number 3, make peace with food.
Yeah, so this is just, we're not going to label good and bad. Ask any dieter, they've had their yeses and their nos around food. And the thing about food is it should make you feel good all the time. There shouldn't be guilt or shame around being a bad person for eating something bad. We've kind of gone to a big extreme, I think, where in the name of healthful eating, food almost has a moral value to it. And I'll share some links to some articles that have come out kind of saying that's not the right direction either. I'll put those in the show notes. But this is the idea that you choose food based on what you have a preference of, and you're not going to fight with it anymore.
And this is a really important one for me because there were times, and still I battle with this, where I feel, guilty for eating something, or like I'm a bad person for eating something. This making peace with food is pretty interesting to me because I remember thinking, especially throughout this journey, well, am I the only one giving this much attention and power to the food that I'm consuming? And for me, it does lead to some of that Last Supper mentality that is kind of stated here in the principles I'm reading. It says, it leads to that, okay, this is the last time, so I'm going to get it in, and then from here I'm going to be really good.
Yep, the angel and the devil, and
absolutely
black and white thinking gets involved. It really is just this idea that, food is meant to be nourishing and positive, life enhancing. And no matter what your current relationship is with food and your body and your health, you can turn the direction to a path where you want to go. But, for you, for anyone else listening, if you're not satisfied with the way you're taking care of yourself with food now, open up your mind to how intuitive eating might be able to help you chart a different course, one that's more satisfying and more freeing.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and keep moving. Principle 4, challenge the food police.
Yeah. So that's just, that's everywhere, right? The rules, the ideas of, being good and bad. And to me, I feel like that kind of intertwines with making peace with food. So it's a similar idea that, we really shouldn't be placing the level of judgment on food that we are. It's not a moral issue, and it really is about, again, feeling good physically and emotionally with ourselves and our bodies, and feeling good about our food choices. And I think what could be very difficult for people is not letting other judgments impact their decisions in a negative way. I see that a lot. Like, you're not going to eat that, really, or, oh, you're being bad, really. And it just creates this culture of it's okay to police our food, and it's not.
Amen.
But it can be hard.
Amen. I'll tell you what. I was actually coming off the show, and this this brings back a memory for me. Mm-hmm. So I was just recently off the show. I was walking down the street. I had a Dairy Queen ice cream cone in my hand, and I literally, someone stopped and said, "Oh my gosh, you're not going to eat that." Somebody stopped on a street in Chicago.
Smacked it out of your hand.
They tried to, but I have kung fu reflexes. But yes, do not.
You won't touch my Dairy Queen.
Yes, I'm telling you, this is a very, I was like, you're not going to touch this. But this for sure. I like the way that you had summed that one up. Let me go ahead and go on to the next one. Number 5, respect your fullness. Oh, yes. Rebecca, respect
this one's hard for me.
Yeah, I'm going to let you break this down before I jump right in.
Again, it's another signal from the body. I think the number one reason, I think there's 2 reasons why this one's so hard. Number 1 is we don't give eating the credit, the attention, and the respect it deserves. We are racing down the hallway as shoving something in our mouth. We still buy convenience food, and food can be nutritious and convenient. I take lots of shortcuts, but I think we lack our planning, so we don't necessarily get the quality, healthful foods in the house. So we're always making these split-second decisions. Oh, I'm going to get my latte, so I'll just get the bagel to go along with it. And then that becomes a habit. And again, no judgments to lattes and bagels, there will be nutrition down later, but I think that this is a real point. It's all very mindless, and you can't, if you're not connecting to your body, you're not able to sense hunger or fullness. And so I think that's a big, big problem with, foods in front of us, and we just keep eating because it tastes good, or because we're watching TV, or because we're bored, or other people are doing it, or we're not even thinking of a reason. We're just doing on automatic pilot. So we're not even giving ourselves the awareness of checking in to see how our belly feels. So that's one big thing that we need to learn to do as part of intuitive eating. And it's a very important part of structure. If you're on a diet, you're just kind of really go with your willpower until you're bad and just getting stuffed, or on your cheat day, but if you're doing intuitive eating, you're checking in to notice you're enjoying your food, you're enjoying the pace, but you notice a nuance of comfortable, full, as a signal that you've had enough, and it's probably going to be about time to respect that fullness and stop eating. And then just real quickly, the second barrier that we have is our stomachs are like balloons, and that means they stretch. So as part of evolution, we can hold quite a bit of food if we want. So, we have that ability to stretch and get, stuffed or more full than normal without having, as negative consequences as when you get hungry and you get hangry, cranky, irritable, and that it's sending our body saying you need to get food. But with fullness, you do get satiety, but it's more subtle, and biologically it's just easy to eat more. It's easy, and that is such a core principle of intuitive eating, is you just say, when I start to get comfortably full, it's a sign I've had enough nourishment. It's not a rule. You can keep eating, but do you really feel good when you get uncomfortably full? And why would you do that to yourself if you're doing body kindness, if you're coming from a place of love, connection, and caring? Why would you make yourself feel uncomfortably full? So the respectful thing to do, the intuitive eating thing to do, is to listen to those signals and say, you know what, I'll have more of this when I'm hungry again, or at another time when I would not feel uncomfortable. And people will learn those lessons as they practice intuitive eating, like, oh, as I'm checking in, I don't feel good when I eat a giant plate of nachos at dinner. And so now they get information to try to maybe make something a little bit more balanced. You crave nachos, but you get some proteins in there, some veggies in there, a smaller portion that's not going to make you feel so uncomfortable. And that is how you get, to your better eating habits.
Well, what I really like about this one in particular is the fact that I know when I was living the healthier life that I was really loving, I would do this a lot more. So I would check in with myself. I also found that it helped me to enjoy my meals better. The food, I got more out of it. There does reach a point, and I have tended to ignore it sometimes in the past, where it just doesn't taste the same as the first, second, third, fourth bite. Bite number 20, 21, 22, you're just kind of man versus fooding it. Like, I just want to see if I can get this whole thing down. So I understand this, and it's something that I know I personally want to keep incorporating into my life. Let me move on to number 6. It says, discover the satisfaction factor.
Yeah, so satisfaction is very important, and when we are satisfied with our food, we tend to feel more comfortable with the idea of stopping. So when you choose what you really like, it acknowledges that we have cravings. And so, when I have my gotta have a pizza night, I'm excited to have pizza. I do still think about nutrition, and I think, okay, what do we have? I'll pull out some grapes. Make a little salad or something that I can put on the table, add vegetables to the pizza. I'm not out there like the police saying everybody must put together a perfectly balanced plate, but I'm putting options out there so that we have a variety of foods to choose from, and then we can honor those cravings. And it is important to listen to yourself. And I know you mentioned before, if you never satisfy a craving, it will just send you back to the refrigerator to keep looking for other allowed foods. Whereas if you just would have satisfied the craving in the first place, you would have been better off.
Well, what I like about this one too, and I was reading part of this as you were talking about it, is it talks about the overall ambiance even of your meal. Pay attention to the surroundings, the whole atmosphere of it. It's like taking yourself out on a date.
But cheaper.
That's fun. Actually taking the time to really dive into your meal and have it fulfill you in a way that is more than just what you're consuming.
Yeah. Absolutely. You eat with your eyes, all your senses, noticing the smells, that's all aroma, I should say. I don't know if we want our food to smell. Aroma is a better word. But, there's a lot to notice about the eating experience. Yeah. And all of that is satisfying. I like music too. I like eating with other people. It helps me just enjoy the process of eating, and that it is something to slow down and do. Other cultures, they take longer lunches, they slow down and they stop and they enjoy their food. And I think that that's a very important part of what healthful eating is. In fact, there was, the Mediterranean diet. I hate that it has the word diet in it because they don't control calories there. But it's kind of one of the ones that's touted, and I actually have a lot of support and love for, what they're recommending. Although there's some things I would argue, but that'll be a different topic. But when there was an article, I'll share the link for it, but it was talking about the virtues of the Mediterranean. And they said, the more we think about it, the more we're starting to question if it's not just the food, it's the lifestyle and the way they live their life, and they take vacations and they don't get overstressed and they enjoy their meals. That's all about what makes a satisfying life, so that food doesn't have to come in and be a placeholder for.
So that's why they look so happy and so good. That's where they're living. I totally get that one. Let me go ahead and move on to the next one. Sure. We have number 7. It says, honor your feelings without using food.
Yes. We're going to turn that into an entire podcast, but
Yes.
several podcasts. I mean, this is my specialty. This was my life at one time. And it is just, the bottom line is all feelings are good. Bad feelings are good. Good feelings are good. They all have a beneficial purpose, and bad feelings are there to tell you that something's wrong, something needs your attention, something's not sitting well with you. So whether that's an argument with somebody else, or, your mood's just been off, seasonally your mood could be off. It could be any number of things, but we experience a gamut of emotions, and when we use food to soothe, we're trying to, numb or avoid or run away. It's because we have difficulty feeling what we're feeling. And when you experience emotions at too high of intensity than you can regulate without using food, you'll go to food as the thing that you end up, quote, using. And it might not be drugs or alcohol or compulsive shopping or other things that you could do, but it's not the intended use of food, and you will never really reach your full health and happiness and wellness and body kindness and all that stuff if you're, fusing and being controlled by your thoughts and by your habits of using food as a way to provide comfort or escape or avoidance.
On this particular one, Rebecca, I'm going to go ahead and wait until we actually have a whole show about it, because I won't stop talking. You want to tell me something? I will not stop talking. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward to... Okay.
Maybe next week. We don't have a topic 8. Yet. So next time.
Yes. That could be a really good one. Okay. Principle 8, respect your body.
Yeah. So I guess, well, all of body kindness is about respecting your body. So there's a connection there. It's taking good care of yourself. Another idea for a podcast is about, do we really need to say, hey, you need to love yourself, or do we just call a truce with our bodies? Not everybody's ready to love themselves, but we can at least show our body respect. Say, I'm your friend. I want to care for you. Part of respecting your body is not doing harmful things like dieting, not, being rigid with it and fighting against the signals, and just trying to take good care of yourself.
What I really liked about the explanation on this one, when I read what you sent on over, was the fact that it says you have to kind of respect your genetic blueprint, which I thought was really interesting. And it goes on to make this comparison about how a person with a shoe size of 8 would not expect to realistically squeeze into a size 6 without it being extremely painful or uncomfortable. I was like, I can resonate with that, because I think far too often, we see these GQ models or, somebody out there that's supposed to be this portrait of beauty or fitness, and that's what we expect all our working out that we do to be the end result of us looking that way. And I really like the way they put it, respect your body's blueprint as well.
Yep. And it is a very important thing. And I'll share in the show notes, but there's a really good YouTube video called Poodle Science that talks about in terms of like dogs, and like a poodle's never going to look like a mastiff. And so why are we trying to get mastiffs to lose weight to look like poodles? It's about size diversity basically. And it's spot on. We're all different
I
weights
need
and
to
shapes.
Definitely see that. I'm challenging our viewers to make sure that they tune in.
We're not all poodles. I'm not a poodle. Yes. I don't know what kind of dog I am.
I'm going to come back next week and tell you what type of canine I am, I guess. Number 9, it says exercise, feel the difference.
Yeah. So to me, this, it kind of the way eating should make you feel good, exercise should make you feel good. And, it's really just about, we're not on a treadmill just watching the numbers climb up of how many calories we're burning, or we're not going in no pain, no gain. I mean, I feel like you should be talking more about this than me.
Oh,
I mean, I've done lots of endurance races and stuff, but I feel like all the stuff I've done, I've always treated my body. Well, not always. I did have a DNF one marathon, would not listening to myself. But for the most part, I treated my body well and listened to it and respected it. But I don't necessarily think that you have always done that, especially with stuff on The Biggest Loser. So,
yeah, and not just on The Biggest Loser, after The Biggest Loser,
mm-hmm.
even sometimes when I think about how I want to work out, my mind goes straight towards that intensity. I'm not necessarily paying attention to how my body just feels different as a result of being active and being a participating in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree with this one as well. Just feel the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go ahead and move on to the final principle, and that's number 10, honor your health.
Yes. This is the nutrition one. Hooray! They save it for last. Evelyn has a really good a reason for saving it for last. She basically says, look, we give honor your health as number one, even though we're nutrition experts, we give that as number one. And everybody's just going to slap diet principles on top of it. So this is, health is a gift. And it is something that hopefully all our listeners are interested in protecting their health and working within their genetics and interests and everything. And it's something that they want to care about and invest in. And that it is something that should be honored through self-care, through body kindness, through practicing intuitive eating. And that there are, apple's never going to be chocolate cake. Intuitive eating is not about ignoring nutritional values of foods. It's much more about the way and the patterns and the thoughts about food and our relationship with food and our behavioral patterns than it is what you're eating. And this is where I would say the way that I work with people is in putting together balanced plates, which is in the Feel Great Guide. And I've talked about it before, but roughly half plate veggies and fruits, healthy type stuff. The other half, usually, protein and a grain, but sometimes it might just be mac and cheese. Sometimes it might be a salmon or steak. But it's this idea that there's balance on the plate and that nutrition is important. It doesn't have to be the ruling factor. It's not necessarily a healthy thing that every time you eat, the very first thing you think of is what's the healthiest thing I could order. But you should have a respect for yourself and your health to want to know about nutritious eating and how to nourish your body well, without needing to have rules.
Well, I feel like I've learned a lot, almost like a crash course in intuitive eating. And I know that Rebecca really addressed a lot of things here. So if there are questions, again, feel free to submit those to us.
Mm-hmm.
We would love to answer them.
And are you going to start trying it, do you think? Are you interested or?
I am interested. There were specific principles that really stuck out. Again, it was honor your feelings without using food. I know we said we're going to possibly have a whole show about this. I really hope we do, because that's one that I'm going to go ahead and share with our listeners. I do struggle with. When I'm happy, I eat. When I'm sad, I eat. When I'm bored, I eat. When I'm anything, I can honor my
When I'm
feelings. I really
sleeping,
have
I
to.
eat.
When I'm sleeping, I sleep, walk, eat. I chew in my sleep. So yes, that's definitely one. Another one that I really did like, just so you know, was that whole getting back to exercising and feeling the difference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm weird, or maybe I'm not, in the fact that sometimes I am in it, and I'll be very honest, for that intensity, and I want to get in there, and it's no pain, no gain. You had mentioned that. And I find that when I feel the healthiest and when I feel the most control, and I know that I'm living my life to the fullest, my reasons for exercising are more of what it provides me,
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, emotionally, as opposed to just physically.
Right.
So, to answer your question, yes, I'm very interested in some of these principles. I do want to give them a try. And I am coming from the other spectrum, Rebecca,
Mm-hmm.
where this is not something that I would have gravitated towards on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's listeners out there that can relate to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that what's A, what's B, what's C, so I can just do it, get to where I need to go and revel in the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
But being so far removed from my experience both on the Biggest Loser and also with my own health journeys here and there, I know that that type of mentality and that thinking has always led to the up and the down and the up and the
Sure.
down and the not having
Mm-hmm.
a really safe place when it comes to my health.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I'm
Okay.
going to give this a go.
All right. Well,
Um,
let me share a couple resources with you. I will get you a hunger scale and put that in the show notes because I think that will help with honoring hunger, respecting fullness. And there's also the free intuitive eating community online. I'll put that in the show notes. So those can be some resources that you can use. I recommend when I start working with this and clients that they read the principles every day. Until you just kind of feel like you're getting it, because it's almost like your affirmations. This is what I'm focusing on. This is what I'm doing. So between this show and the next show, I think we should do that. And I definitely think we should focus on the honor your feelings without food for the next one. And on the exercise bit, I think, like we said before, there's nothing wrong with intense exercise, but I think that in the intense exercise should still feel good. And so it sounds like you're really needing to work on consistent movement and letting it all count and really celebrating even the small things that you do. If you drop and do push-ups or squats, while you're cooking a meal or something like that, and that you really are looking for those moments. I mean, you're a new dad and life's not easy. You work, family, there's a lot of stuff going on. So, but that you really engage in self-care regularly and that you celebrate those exercise things that you do so that not good enough feeling becomes part of your past.
I'm all about it. One thing that we had talked about, and this is for our listeners, Rebecca really shares so much with me even before we start pressing the record button. And one of the things that she had talked about, because exercise had been something that I was telling her I was having a little difficulty really getting into or feeling like I was getting a lot out of it. She said, Bernie, don't worry so much about the intensity, how long you're doing it, how many calories, you're burning. And again, this is a body kindness show, but I'm still guilty of having these types of thoughts. One thing she had suggested to me, and I'd like to kind of put that out there to our listeners as well, is why don't you go ahead and just count the minutes, the time that you're actually being active, as opposed to what it is that, the intensity you're doing or the exercise that you're doing. And that really resonated with me, Rebecca, because I do have dogs, so I can go for a walk. And if I go ahead and start adding that time up, where before I would have just thought to myself, yeah, it's just another chore I did, I walked my dog. I'm thinking to myself, well, that was 15 minutes
Mm-hmm.
of movement. 20
Yeah.
minutes of movement. I have one little stubborn dog that likes to take 30 minutes to reach his movement. So yes,
Cool.
I
That's awesome.
challenge our
We should do
listeners
a
to
little
do that.
Instagram support thing where you write it down on a piece of paper and just take a picture of it and be like, this is what I did today, smiley face, body kindness or something. And
You know what? I can do that. For our listeners, it's Biggest Loser Bernie on Instagram. Pretty easy. Um, you know what? Let me go ahead. We're going to get moving on.
okay.
I read something the other day. So I want my listeners to know that I also do my fair share of reading here. It's very important to me as an educator. But I did come across an article on NPR's The Salt. And the reason why it caught my attention was the title in particular. It said, Diet foods are tanking. So the diet industry is now selling health. And I read this and it really made me think almost conspiracy theory-ish. It's like, yeah, you're right. I haven't heard so much of this diet or that diet. It's more like healthy this and healthy
Mm-hmm.
that. And it got me thinking, well, what exactly does that mean? How are they now packaging it? And one very interesting thing in this article talked about how um, half of the people in this particular survey said they didn't even know what to think about nutrition and wellness information. Um, it goes on to say how even the federal government isn't sure what natural means. And
Mm-hmm.
increasingly, consumers have to contend with terms like gluten free, vegan, non GMO, ACDC, Run DMC. I mean, like, how are we to discern what it is we should be, looking for in the
Mm-hmm.
aisles of our grocery stores.
Yeah. Yeah, I will be very grateful if this wave that I see brewing, really does continue on and grows. And that's, I just think people are rejecting the idea of diets. They're chronic dieters. They're like, it just hasn't worked. And or the other thing that I think is a really big push too is just the movement of caring about where your food comes from and quality and ingredients. Again, I do think that can be taken to an extreme. I happen to think that there's room in the world for grocery store cake. My daughter got a grocery store cake for her birthday, and I don't really think I was aiming to harm her in any way as a birthday. So again, I think we can take quality and purity to an unhealthy extreme. There's actually a form of disordered eating called orthorexia, which is a separate episode. We'll talk about pure eating.
Oh my gosh!
Another time.
Think that I've never even heard that one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a real thing. But anyway, the bottom line is when they see sales plummet, they start to wonder what consumers want, and they don't want their foods labeled as diet foods. From what I understand in the market research, people, they still have weight concerns and may even say, look, I really do still want to lose weight, but they want their life to be about much more, so they're just not into the fat-free craze anymore, or the craze of calories, even if there's going to be quality stuff inside. So one example I can think of is lean cuisine. They are really, their name is lean cuisine, so I don't really know how you back out of that, but their branding and their website is just different, and they're really, selling this whole person, holistic, and really just trying to get rid of a lot of their diet stuff that they used to have. And so I think a lot of it, and what this article is about, is just trying to appeal to the consumer market. And we do vote with our dollar. And I think that when you're looking at making behavioral changes, scrutinize what you spend your money on. And if, there's, bars out there about thin, this or that, if the name is portraying something that you don't believe in, don't buy the product. The ingredients should be quality that you care about. If they're promising weight loss, I highly doubt it, because that company would be rich and everybody would be doing it. And so I just think your article you brought up is a sign of the times, that it is hopefully, diets are passe and it's actually trendy to not be doing the dieting thing. But what do you do when you don't diet? You do things like intuitive eating. You do things like practice body kindness. You do things. It's a lot of structured ways to take care of yourself, but you do it your way, in a way that feels good to you. And you turn them into habits, not fads.
No, I definitely like this article as well, and it actually ended by saying, kind of wrapped up the same way you did. It's saying that, ultimately, mindfulness is what's really working, and to stay away from a lot of these fad things or the diets out there, because they don't lead to the results you want, and then altogether people just give up on their health, and that's definitely what we don't want to see happen.
Yeah. Well, my share is going to be really brief this week. I don't know if you heard about it, but I was really excited when the news came out that there is a new line of Barbies in town.
I just heard about this one. I didn't catch the actual article, or I was listening to NPR. I'm dying to hear about this, especially because I have a little girl. So
yes.
let's go.
Yeah. So they're basically bringing diversity to Barbie. It's the first time that they've done this in 50 some years. And interestingly, I'll have to share the Time article, but I found out the original Barbie was actually developed from a German doll from like the porn industry. So
interesting. Nice.
That's the excuse for the big boobs. The truth is Barbie is an icon. I, as a mom, would never buy my daughter a Barbie, because like the other moms, it's where's the diversity? Where's the representation? And the bottom line is they decided to make a major change. It's been going on for a couple of years. They have different skin tones, lighter makeup, different heights, that they have a petite and they have what they're calling a curvy Barbie. So they're all Barbie and they have different hair colors and different clothes. And like some people are like, oh, but now all the clothes aren't going to fit on all the dolls. And I guess they had this dilemma for like, well, how do you package them? So they're packaging like the curvy Barbie with another Barbie. So it's interesting that there's been all this. I mean, I feel personally grateful that they're doing forward momentum, and that they're evolving. So I think there was a trending hashtag like the doll evolves or something like that. You can, and I'll share the time story and the videos that they did around this. I was really impressed with, and I got to give them credit. I really like to be a curmudgeon and say, work harder, do more, which I will tell Mattel that you can do more. But this is a very smart move. But frankly, it did come out of sales. They lost market share. They lost a Disney contract, and for the Disney princesses, they lost market share. And they said, we really need to reinvent ourselves for the future. And they really said, look, millennials don't play, and they are not going to spend their money on dolls that they don't feel is representative of our culture.
That's really interesting. As a matter of fact, my little girl got her first Barbie from a relative, and it was one of these collector like holiday editions. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of stood there looking at my wife, and then looking at my daughter, and looking at my wife, and what do you do, when somebody gifts you something like that? I wasn't going to be that guy where I'm just like, no, thank you. But part of me was one. Yes,
you got time, Bernie. You got time. But
yes,
by 9, unless the stats change, by 9, 45% of girls would have already tried one diet. Wah, wah.
By 9?
By 9 years old, I know.
By 9 years old. I'm just not going to let my daughter watch TV at all. Ever. She can listen to our show.
Gosh. I have to share this. My daughter has some silly little magazine, and in the back is about elephants. And I'm like, okay, it's going to teach her about elephants, her favorite animal. Very first thing it says is like, an elephant weighs 10,000 pounds. It never has to go on a diet. And it's on a scale and looking all sad. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. It's on my Facebook page. So you can see it on the Rebecca Scritchfield Facebook page. But it's like, I was like, really? You want me to read this to my daughter? Idiots.
We got to change this. We are. That's what we're doing here. I get it. All right, Rebecca. I actually want to go ahead, and if I can, really quickly, we did get a question of the week.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. It's actually from, let's see, it's from Deb in LA. Okay, and the question reads, my ears perked up when you said exercise doesn't have to be intense to be beneficial. I used to enjoy all types of activity, but now if an exercise is not as intense as it could be, I feel deflated, like I could have tried harder. Help me feel better about all my exercise, please. Yours truly, Deb. And then she goes on to say, P.S. I'm really enjoying this podcast, guys. Deb, thank you for listening. I'm glad someone is out there enjoying what it is we're sharing. I am going to go ahead and throw this over to Rebecca, though. Rebecca, what do you think about this one?
Yeah. So this is a common problem that has to do with our inner voice. We're all talking to ourselves all day long, and it's a broken record almost, going on and on and on. Our thoughts are really ceaseless and don't stop. And it's fine as long as the thoughts are helpful, or as long as we have a way of just kind of telling them to buzz off. But Deb, what's going on with you is that you have this voice that comes in that criticizes you after activities that don't meet a certain benchmark. And it sounds like it's making you feel worse after the exercise, or, you're not getting that energizing gratitude, go me excitement afterwards that you deserve for taking care of yourself. And so I think that, one of the things that hopefully will start your process of feeling better about all your exercise is just recognizing that it's a critical voice in your head, that it doesn't represent you. or your true thoughts and beliefs. At some point it showed up. It's not helpful because it doesn't help you feel good about the exercise that you do if it's not intense. It doesn't motivate you to want to keep going. And so just recognize that it's not a helpful thought, and it's just words though. And so you basically take your power away from the thought by not feeding into it. You could just say something like, you know what, I am grateful that I did that exercise because I really got to enjoy the scenery outside, or I really enjoyed the downtime. You know, when we do actually moderate exercise, like walking out in nature, we actually boost our creativity. So there's lots of other benefits to exercise that have nothing to do with how many calories you're burning or how hard you're working or how intense it is. So I would also encourage you to maybe come up with a few reasons for why you're exercising. And then the other thing that you could do is just use them as like a mantra kind of each time. Like, you know, this time I'm going to cultivate the fact that I know I'm strengthening my heart, and that's important to me because I want to be around and travel and enjoy life, and just kind of let, you know, some other thoughts show up that you can grow and cultivate. And I think that's a good starting point. And you'll see, you know, the negative thoughts are there until they're no longer there, but it does help. You don't focus on them. Don't try to chase them away. Don't try to engage with it. Just acknowledge it, make room for that negativity, but then allow yourself to stay committed to your exercise anyway, and look for something positive that you can feel grateful for about what you're doing, and be consistent with that. And if that's still a struggle after practicing that for a couple weeks, the thing that always works for me is I just imagine looking Bernie in the face and saying, oh yeah, Bernie, you really sucked on that 2-mile walk today. You know, you suck. And when you can practice telling a friend or someone you care about this negativity, you really get to see how jarring that is. And then if you respect yourself enough, it's a body kindness thing to say, you know, I want to treat myself the way I want others to treat themselves and the way I treat others.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, that really, really resonated with me. So, Deb, I hope you're hearing that. I know, Deb, just from your question, that you are just a wonderful, great, dynamic person. And you would never say, Bernie, gosh, you suck because you went slow at that pace for your 2-mile walk. And, Deb, I challenge you to not do that to yourself. You are so worth speaking beautifully and wonderfully and encouragingly to yourself. So I would just like to congratulate you for getting out there, moving your body, breathing in the air, and being active.
That's awesome. Well, I did want to introduce, before we close, the monthly challenge for the podcast, and it's Boost Your Mood with Body Kindness. So for all the challenges, the way you can get involved is by getting on my email list. It's at RebeccaScritchfield.com. When you sign up, you'll get the free Feel Great Guide, and you can use that through all the challenges. This particular month, February's theme is Boost Your Mood with Body Kindness. And I really wanted to do this in February because we're getting a lot less sun, days are shorter, and we actually need sunlight as a way to help make enough vitamin D that is actually a hormone, not a vitamin, but one of the roles that it plays is in helping our mood stay elevated. So get out in the sun wherever you live, whenever you can. That's one thing you can do. Also making sure you get enough foods with omega-3, so things like salmon and various seeds and nuts are good sources of omega-3s. I will be sure to include some information about food sources of omega-3s in the show notes. We know exercise boosts the mood, and we'll be getting that monthly challenge out on the email list any day now. And then there will be a weekly email that follows up with recipe ideas and different challenges that you can join along with. And then you can also join with us on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff too.
Absolutely. And if you need any more ideas, I want to go ahead and encourage them to check out your Feel Great Guide. I've been pulling a couple things off there, especially when it comes to boosting my mood. One thing that I did do, and I'm going to go ahead and share because I was pretty excited about it because I normally don't have this kind of follow through, but I wrote thank you letters and actually bought little boxes of candy for all the nurses and the labor staff that helped bring my beautiful daughter into the world. I could have given them fruit, Rebecca, but believe me, they were the night shift, and I'm pretty sure they took a lot away from that
Yeah.
little box of truffles.
Exactly. All things in moderation, including moderation, you know. Well, great. Well, I had a great time talking with you about intuitive eating. I am all about the next show talking about honor your feelings without food, and would love listener questions and feedback because we're here for you and each other.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful rest of your week.